So I'm going to move on now just to look at those in turn. And it's worth saying here there's kind of 5 clusters of behaviours, and it's probably worth saying here that they don't appear as clusters, and I'll show you in a second when I get to the end of this slide how they do appear. But in terms of actually thinking about your job role and the evidence, it's quite useful to think about it in these terms. So what you'll see is the cluster title. So in the first one is this approach, the general approach of being open to constructive challenge and questioning attitude. And what's in the larger box there are just a number of selected examples. It's not the exhaustive list. There would be more things that would appear in the standard, but it gives you a flavour for the sorts of behaviours that we would expect you to be able to evidence and point to, whether that's in the way you conduct and go about your role. So actually challenging unsafe acts and behaviours, actually whilst out, maybe walking the job, scrutinising the work of a team, inspecting, carrying out a peer review type. It could be any number of things, but that challenge, or it could be, for example, with the next example there, working against complacency, maintaining and encouraging questioning attitude. Might be in a different setting. You actually perform some sort of training role or induction or training, and actually, what are you doing there to instill that approach and those attitudes? The contributing to continuous improvement. That might be again looking at follow-up of near misses, identifying what's gone wrong, what could be improved. It might be a more formal process of improvement, an improvement project where some shortfalls have been identified. Any of those things is kind of potential sources of evidence, but it can be formal or less formal, but the sorts of behaviours that we would expect to see coming through. Moving on from that to understand and discharge your role responsibilities. And this is thinking particularly about how, we all have a whole myriad of roles and responsibilities within our overarching job descriptions or role specifications or contracts that we take on if we are contractors or self-employed. And we do a wide range of things. This is thinking about those things that you do that specifically have an impact on safety, security, contributing to the culture, etc. But what we're looking for in evidence in the nuclear delta is that you kind of understand what your contribution is to those things. You see where within your role you make those contributions to the safety culture, and you kind of actively work towards making that an effective contribution. So I guess the step is going above just saying, okay, well, I understand the processes and procedures. It's that issue of the why and how then by doing that in the appropriate manner and following the appropriate processes and policy requirements, whatever it might be, that you actually are then discharging those roles and responsibilities in a way that contributes to the overall safety and security mission. Moving on from that, applying technical and specialist and sector knowledge. You could equally add into that list organizational knowledge and role-specific or team-specific knowledge. Some of those things might be quite structured and formal, and things that you are trained and developed in, like the use of human performance tools. Others might be actually just actually having that knowledge and underpinning that you are able to identify potential issues, conditions, things that are going to potentially lead to safety incidents, and actually thinking through that area and being able to, whether it's through the kind of the formal stop act think review type stop think act review, I'll even get the words in the right sequence, pre-job briefs, or things that are perhaps more just a case of you working through the technical detail of a job and actually thinking through those consequences and being able to then act on it. So that technical specialist sector knowledge will vary massively between individual roles, and that reflection, thinking how does it apply to me in my job, in my career, is where you need to start this process. And then a bit of an outlier, but one which is again we feel for professional recognition is quite important. We've termed it in this context objective professionalism, and I guess what it really is about using evidence-based arguments. That might be within conducting the detail of your job role. It might be in dealing with consultations, responses, public sector, public engagement. It could be in work and things like being a STEM ambassador and those sorts of areas. But it's that basis of using that evidence-based approach, that balanced view. It's not that we're expecting everyone who becomes a professional member to be a public profile advocate of nuclear, although that would be nice. But it's more about just that general professionalism approach of using evidence-based arguments. And then finally, in this set of clusters, is acting in accordance with organizational and regulatory requirements and operating procedures. The examples on that I've selected there are, I guess, quite technical in nature, but there could also be organizational procedures around, HR training, managing nuclear baseline, numbers of people, responsible persons, that sort of thing, that would all be equally applicable in terms of how you contribute and help maintain compliance with organizational and regulatory requirements. So there's the kind of 5 behavioral clusters, and I guess the step we're advising you to take in thinking about how does the nuclear delta apply to you is think under those broad headings without getting too far into the detail as to how does that apply to me in my role. And thinking about it, this is very dodgy graphic here, but in terms of the number of different roles and perspectives on those, ranging from science and technical based roles to more operative or engineering type roles, through IT, through commercial, through security, through emergency response, and so you go on. And I'm sure many of those roles are represented on the line on the call today. Each will have a slightly different take on that, but the principle, the strength, the value of the nuclear delta is that if each of those people in each of those roles does understand and discharge their role responsibilities by applying the appropriate technical knowledge and understanding, and that happens across the nuclear industry and the supply chain, then you are actively strengthening and supporting the safety and security mission in the UK, and in turn the safe use of nuclear technology.